we at the channel filmed something about Christmas Carol earlier. I'm not sure if you have seen it already. You may not have, but if not, it'll come. It'll come. I promise. If you've seen it, if it's already up, it's over there somewhere.
Link in the comments.
Link in the comments. But what came up was translations. You have a property translated into different language. It's not, and on the whole, in the English-speaking language, you're going to be on the other side of it. You're going to be one receiving the translated item, and some of it's head scratcher time. And I want to explain what happens when you make a translation, when you make this sort of thing into translation. I wanted to pick the Christmas Carol for this because you guys already know it. This is such a known story, and we're going to other languages, and I'm going to talk about what happens when that happens. So, there are a few things that are universal for doing any book to film, any adaptation, anywhere, will ask these questions. Like, 1, why? What are you going to adapt, and why are you going to adapt it? And these are, very often the answer to that is we want to make money, which is fair enough. That's a reason why. But then why do a Christmas Carol? Because there's lots of other things you can film. It depends very much on things like budgets. If you have like a big budget, and you have a bunch of young gentlemen, you're going to do Three Musketeers. But if you have a different budget, which is usually a little less, and you have an older gentleman, you might consider doing a Christmas Carol. Fair enough. Secondary to that, is that everybody always has some sort of agenda. Again, this agenda may be we want to make money, which is again is an agenda, which means that if you want to make money, you want to make it look pleasing, you want to get bums on seats, etc., etc. But that's not always the agenda. The next question is, what of the original thing are you going to put in it? So you must pick and choose, because usually the property is longer than your film. Very often a book is, if you have somebody read it to you, a book tends to be between 7 and 15 hours of just somebody reading it out. That's a lot. So if you want to put that in an adaptation of like 2 hours, you're going to have to cross stuff off. A lot of written stuff is about things inside of the head, which doesn't work for film anyway. So you goes all scratch out. So you pick and choose. The other side of that is that you also can pick and choose. You don't have to do elements that you don't want to do. This, of course, has to do with your agenda. If you do a property that's pretty old and has some very unfortunate things that we now think are politically, oh my God, you can just drop them. You can either address them or you can drop them. That is your prerogative in making your adaptation. These are choices that you make, and like every adaptation does this. With Christmas Carol, this is one of the reasons I picked it, other than the other reasons that you will find, is that Christmas Carol, when read out, it's a novella. It's a big story basically. It's only 3 hours, just under 3 hours, being read to it. So you can cut that down to a very, very good representational hour and a half easily. You don't lose anything. You don't have to give up anything. So you're free. You're very free in that. So it's a really easy thing to adapt. Second thing about Christmas Carol is that it's the way it was written. It's cinematographical. You can just do whatever he said and just do it, and it's fine. It's good. We're good to go. There's when you see our review of it, there is an adaptation that did exactly that. So, hey. Then you come to translations. Translations is different from an adaptation in that in an adaptation you are kind of stuck with some of the things that people loved about the original, the exact wording, like bah humbug and God bless us everyone. This is the charm of the Dickens. And is when you make an adaptation, you use it to the best effect, of course. But when you make a translation, you lose that, because bah humbug, what is that? That is nothing. That word may or may not have a meaning outside of Dickens. I'm not sure. But once you translate it to another language, you can go for a word like nonsense in the other language, but it doesn't have the same gravitas that humbug has. Because it has no pedigree, because it has no history of 180 plus years now from when the original was written. And so when you come to the other language, you're going to have to do something else. That's your disadvantage. There is an advantage, however, to making a translation, is that you can update all the stuffy oldness, the God bless us everyone. As charming as that is, if you think about it, it's a very shitty line in a modern context. And you want to change that, and in the case of God bless us everyone, you have to change it, because it doesn't work. Little boy going around saying that, or you're going to have to explain it. You're going to have to do something with it. And the translation in a modern setting, and it's not a translation in the time itself. If you had a translation from 1843, when it was written, if you had that translation, you would do that adaptation of that translation. But then you'd get the God blesses everyone and the humbugs and all that with the pedigree. But now you don't. A thing that might not come very, very apparent for people who don't speak more languages and don't actually translate stuff, especially if you have like a literary work, especially when it has like poetry or lyrics or something like that, is that if you make a translation that you have to perform, it's different from doing subtitles. Subtitles have to be utilitarian, correct, and get you the information so you can follow what's on screen, but you get all the gravitas from the actual performance. Helps if you're doing a subtitle, if people are watching a subtitle for something, they have a little bit of some of the words, so that helps. Dutch subtitlers, who have been doing it for a very long time, have the policy of, when it's subtitling for something for which they expect that the audience has some words like English or French or some German, you can subtitle differently than you would for Chinese. The audience is not going to know any Chinese words, but they're going to know some English words like yes and no, and the sound of English, French, and German is much closer to a Dutch person than Chinese would be. So you subtitle in a different way, but that's subtitling. When you do a translation which has to be performed, you lose whatever you had in the original. You have to now make it a Dutch version, or if we're going for Dutch, a Dutch version. And you have to adhere to a Dutch or German or a French sensibility. When you say, God bless us everyone, and you want to do a French version of that, you have to make sure that that is what a French little kid would say. If they don't, you cannot be saying it, because it will sound stupid. And that's what goes wrong sometimes in things that are translated into English from another property. Somebody says something really strange, and then you sort of go, whoa. And then if I happen to know the culture from which it comes, I sort of go, yeah, that's why. I understand why you don't understand, but that's why. And this is why I'm doing this version of this vlog, to take you through a couple of versions of A Christmas Carol. I have 3 versions, and why. I will talk about 4 versions, but I have 3 versions, and I will talk about why these things and how these things exist. So, in no particular order, because I couldn't make a particular order, we're going to start with some of the versions I found. Christmas Carol in translation is surprisingly few of them. There's plenty of English language versions of the set in the time that it ought to have been. There are a bunch of them that set it in different times and different places, all still in English. Finding one in another language is actually pretty hard. However, I have a few. The first one is kind of an honorable mention, but I liked it as such. A YouTuber did a special series of shorts for language class in German, Christmas Carol German version, but it's an abridged version of the book, so not film. So a lot of the head stuff. That the book versus film is a question of. In a book you can think and feel, in a film you can only see. And so this is why it's on the list, because he put some of the book stuff in there. He had to make, in the adaptation, he had to make a hard choice on what to keep, because I think he's only like 25 minutes total. So he had to lose a lot. And he chose to lose a lot of the action, gaining a lot of the inner thoughts of Scrooge and of the ghost as well. Ghost number 1 gets a pretty large chunk to talk about. It is a language learning thing. I will link it so you can see it. The German is beautiful. Oh, lovely diction, great microphone. So yeah, guy knows his shit. But it's an abridged version, which he just reads out. There's no picture, just sound. The choices are interesting because he doesn't. I was wanted to see what he did with God Blesses Everyone and with what he did with Humbug. The God Blesses with Everyone he loses straight off. He cannot do anything with that in German, and I can see that that's not gonna fly. No, but Humbug, he decided to go for the pedigree version. He went for Humbug. He just put it in as a foreign word. Okay, fine. That also works. I mean, that's a choice. The other thing that he did, which was surprising, is that there are 2 things that happen in the book that very rarely make it to adaptations. The scene in which the housekeeper and the charwoman are selling Scrooge's old belongings after he's dead, taking off his dead body, basically. They usually skip it because it's pretty scary, and it's scary. And it's in here. In his 25 minutes that he could spend on anything he wanted, he did include that part, which I thought was interesting choice, because that is the thing with the translations. You could choose which the parts which you think are important for your culture, which he thought that part was important. That I think it's a very important scene too. But yeah, so. I give the entire thing a 7+, which is 6 and over is 6 out of 10 and over is a pass, and 7+ is it's for 25 minutes. It's very good. Second on my list is a 2017 adaptation, French English bilingual adaptation. Apparently, it is by the Institut Français, but that institute charter is actually in the UK, so much English. And I think that's why they're doing a fusion. It's kind of a fusion, basically. Because I was thinking, is this going to be French? It's going to be English? No, it's fusion. The Scrooge character is French, as is his family, but Cratchit is English, and it's an interesting fusion. It's a fusion more ways than one, because they decided in their less than an hour that they have, they want to do musical as well, so they picked up some songs from the Muppet Christmas Carol, just because it's jolly, and it is jolly, so yes. It's a fusion. And again, choices. You only have an hour. You can't do the entire thing. And you have to put in some extra things. They actually made it a modern version. It is set in modern times, which is, again, as an adaptation, a choice. Your choice is when and where are you going to set it? And in the case of the German one, they set it in where it should have been, in London, with German sensibilities. And here they're setting it in a modern time with a French Scrooge that moved to London. So choices. These are choices that you have to consider. If you did a... let me first finish this one. They have an hour. They have 4 players who play all the parts. So we have the Cratchit Freddy is also some of the ghosts and stuff like that. So everybody doubles up. They have one extra player to play the little girl, Tiny Tina, because I think that it's probably the daughter of somebody, so they had a Tiny Tina and not a Tiny Tim, and they didn't give her too many lines because they didn't want to overburden her. Fair enough. There are references to the Mickey Christmas Carol and the references to the Alistair Sim Christmas Carols from 1951. Very clearly, everybody's seen the Alistair Sim one because that is one of the quintessential ones, and it's easy to have access to. God Bless Us Everyone is, I have to look it up, Joyeux Noël, said by Tiny Tina, but the French version, because, yeah, again, God Blesses Everyone, it's not going to fly, I'm sorry.
Is it the translation?
Joyeux Noël is just Merry Christmas. Joyeux means joyous, and Noël is Christmas, so Merry Christmas. Which is, God Bless Us Everyone is a kind of way of saying Merry Christmas. Fair enough, fair enough. Many of the movies put it in the spot where you would say, Merry Christmas Everyone. So, God Bless Us Everyone. Okay. Then Bah Humbug, it's in there, but because Scrooge is French, it is fumiste. And fumiste translates as hoax. So, yeah, fair. That's what humbug is probably means. Yes, this is a hoax. This is a cheat. This is a scam. So, yeah, fumiste. There you go. I give the whole thing a 7.5. It's on YouTube, nice quality. Only it's a theater performance and filmed with one camera, but the camera is pretty steady. So, yay! Then the next one on the list is what if you take it a little further afield than France and Germany? Say Japan. So I actually went looking for one from Japan, because I think Japan was the best bet on this, because Japan is a country that has an interest in stories to make, like into anime or performances or whatever. And I thought it might be the best bet to find any at all. And crickets. I mean, you've got the Three Musketeers and Gone with the Wind and theater performances.
And Anne of Green Gables.
And Anne of Green Gables in anime, I think at least, and Little Women in anime, and a French thing called Sans Famille in anime as well. So they're interested in foreign storytelling. And for Christmas Carol, crickets. Nobody. And I thought about it, because why is that? And I think I know why. The story of Christmas Carol is a story of a man who is so on the wrong path. And then he gets a chance to get us to see what his path is taking to, and he repents and he changes his direction. And that is a fundamental idea that doesn't work with Buddhism. Buddhism talks about the paths, and you have to keep on it. And if you're off it, It's game over. Try again next lifetime. So this repenting and reforming, it is a null. It doesn't exist. So this story doesn't exist in a Japanese storytelling world. So, crickets. Fair enough. So that's why this one doesn't exist. So we're going back to closer to home in a proper adaptation, a Dutch adaptation. There is a Dutch adaptation. That's the good news. And I'm going to give you the bad news is you can't see it.
You can't see it.
It is.
Nobody can see it.
It doesn't even have a bloody Wikipedia page. I'm going to see if I can try and rectify that. I even have to become a member of Wikipedia to get it there. It doesn't have a page.
No DVDs, no subtitles, not on YouTube, nowhere.
No, and all the pictures that you're going to be seeing are from a... it's been on TV exactly twice. Once in 1979 when it was made, and once somewhere in the 90s. And it's never been on since. And when we go back to our list where it said budget, that's the first thing you realize about this. It's the budget is not going to be a Hollywood budget because it's expected to be on television exactly once. And never repeated. So that's it doesn't have the budget. That's when you, as an American or English speaking audience, and you see something that was an adaptation of something else, and then you go and watch the something else bit, you will see that budget is not a Hollywood budget. Reverse, if the Dutch are going to do something that has things that has Hollywood representation, ours is not going to look like that. It cannot. And the biggest problem with that here is that when it was on in 1979, we did not have a recording of it. We had a sound recording of it, and I listened to that so many times over the years. Just a reel-to-reel, like a recording.
Yeah, this is pre-cassette tapes.
Yes, so I know how to put in a reel to start it, and because I wanted to listen to it. It's really good. But then much later we saw the original, the actual footage, and hoping that the sound would be better. The sound is not better. The sound is terrible. And it's a shame because it's a musical. So that's all the bad news. Now we're going to get to all the good news. It's really good. That's the good news. And I want to tell you what they did and why they did it. Every single part of it. Tiny budget. But what they spent on actors, scripts, and the music in the musical. This is where you need to put it. Also, particular commendation to the camera people. I think there are like 4. And the framing of every shot is so gorgeous. And they had some practical issues with some of these, the limitations of this production. One of the limitations, or it's both a feature and a bug, is the choice of the main actor. Henk van Ulsen was a famous stage actor. Very good, very professional. But he hated film and television. And the reason he hated it, because he hated the standing around. He hated waiting for shots. He wanted to get on with it. He was a stage man. He learned his lines, prepared really well, then go on the stage, do your thing, go off the stage, have a drink afterwards. That's who he was. He had no patience for this standing around business. To the point that everybody knew this. He did like one movie, and after that everybody knew he hated it. So, getting him to come on for this television thing, Willy van Hemert, who directed and produced this thing, he did some jiggery pokery, as you might call it. They filmed it in a very short period of time. I don't even have to look at that Wikipedia page to know that, because that is how it was done in Dutch television. Dutch television was always peopled with lots of stage people who would be in the season from about September until May. They would be on stage, and you would not be able to film them at all. So you did it in the summertime, and you did it fast. And with Henk van Ulsen, you did it real fast. So one of the things when I watched it, you see is that the shots are very long. You have like one camera, and it's almost exclusively like one shot, one camera, and it moves maybe a little bit. When Scrooge and Cratchit move from the portrait of Marley, where they have a song, they move over to the desks, and then they have a scene, and then they move over this way. It's still one shot and to the window, and then Fred comes through the window, because he came through the window in this one, which is so whimsical, and it works so well. Because the reason he comes through the window is because otherwise they would have to do a cut shot to the door, and they don't have time for that kind of shit. So through the window he comes, and they make the bug a feature by making him come through, be whimsical by always coming through the window. And he says, my uncle says that I always come through the window, and so I'm making it a feature here. And it's this thing is so cleverly written because it is a translation. You have the room to make Fred come through the window and make it natural. They realized that the translator realized that the writer, I think Willy van Hemert wrote it. He's a do everything. So he wrote the adaptation with the smartness of what do I have and how can I make the best of it. One of the things about Henk van Ulsen is that he is so good that you can give him a lot of lines. And he's impatient, so give him a lot of lines. So they gave him a lot of lines. He is talking almost non-stop. And again, you make it a feature by making Scrooge a little bit. He's
ADHD.
He's ADHD, and
it's an ADHD Scrooge.
Yes, and in 1979, before people even know what that was, he's already an ADHD kind of Scrooge, more manic actually. He manic because through this story, as the story progresses, as he goes through these ghosts, he gets more manic to the point that he cannot function at all. And that's smart writing and smart acting on the part of Henk van Ulsen, because he has to act it. He starts off as this competent, very politically objectionably saying things that are socially, politically very objectionable, especially now, but then also trying to convince Cratchit that he is right, trying to dismiss Fred.
Well, he's even indoctrinating.
He's trying
Cratchit.
Yes.
He's trying to teach Cratchit his worldview.
Yes. And Cratchit is sort of pulling a face and sort of going, yeah, I have to be here for this, but
he's also very scared.
He's very scared, and he's very insecure, which is also very interesting to play. There's another thing that is both a bug and made into a feature, is the nature of A Christmas Carol. Christmas Carol, the original is called A Christmas Carol in Prose, being a ghost story of Christmas. That's the original title from 1843. Ghost stories, and I have to explain that for the American audience, because the British know this. In Britain, telling ghost stories for Christmas is a tradition, much the same way that Americans tell ghost stories at campsites in the summertime. This is tradition, so this is very normal. In America, you're sort of used to it now because it's been grandfathered in. This is a ghost story, and it's always been a scary ghost story for Christmas, but that's because the Christmas Carol is like that, not anything like that, but you're used to that. Netherlands, we don't have any of that. We don't have the pedigree for the story, and we don't have ghost stories for Christmas at all. So what are you going to do? A Dutch person, when he reads the story, or she reads the story, will go, this is a religious story. It's a story of redemption, a story of bezinning.
Coming to terms?
Yeah. Coming to terms with... the bezinning is coming to terms with spiritual matters, basically. So that's why I'm saying bezinning. So it is exactly that. It even includes a bunch of spirits, which I have to say, in Dutch, the word for ghost and the word for spirit is the same word, geest. The other word for ghost that actually means a spooky is spook. Spoke. Yeah, but that is Marley is a spook, whereas the other spirits are geesten. Yes. And it is a religious parable. This is a religious parable. To a Dutch person, this is a religious parable. So Willy van Hemert, who usually filmed for the KRO, and KRO stands for Katholieke Radio Omroep, and K, Catholic. He was. So this made perfect sense to pick this. The Christmas theme is, it was, I do remember it being on at Christmas, or just before, just after. So this was their Christmas show. But it is a religious show. The scary bit is incidental for a Dutch person, which is different, very different from that. It's a different culture, and you have to play into that, which they did.
The scary bit is also part of the how horrible he was and how much he needs redeeming.
Yeah.
And then they send in the ghosts, which are, in this case...
yes. I'll come to that.
Get to that. Okay.
I'll come to that, yes.
Yeah. So I would say that Marley still is the spooky ghost in this one, because he does
Willy van Hemert makes the fact that there's a scary ghost to it a feature, not a bug. Yeah. This is not a bug. He makes sure that anything you might think that might be a bug is not a bug anymore. And pretty much everything, he included everything, which makes this a perfect adaptation. He did his best to get everything in there.
And he tied the jangling of the gold, which he has Scrooge has an actual chest of gold, and a metal chest of gold that he puts in his bed.
Yes, he does.
At night. And there's like gold rattling around in there, and they use that jangling as the same way as the chains that are jangling off of Marley.
They actually
connect the spookiness and the ghostliness of that. The scariness continues after Marley's gone in the gold.
Yeah. The thing is, actually, when you rewatch it, and it's been on TV twice exactly, this is so rewatchable. I've watched it like 5-6 times already, and I just last night I watched it again, and I noticed something that we hadn't noticed before. The opening scene, because it starts on the street. They have a very small set. They have a street scene, and then the windows of the Marley and Scrooge, and then the inside of that as well. And it's the same set, so you can actually have a view out the window onto the street, and that's the same street. So you can actually have the camera go out into the hall. There's the office of Marley and Scrooge. Then there's a hallway, and then there's his own rooms. And then in the hallway you go outside, and then outside is the street. And across the street there is a facade of a church, which also doubles as the stock exchange house. So that's it. That's the entire thing. The thing opens in the street, people are dancing and singing, and And like I said, you're gonna go when I say this, but it opens with a guy carrying a goose, traveling along the streets on the way to his poultry shop, and the thing entirely ends with that goose, the goose being the guy being called out by some kids for Scrooge, and then he brings the goose. Hey, somebody ordered a goose, and then Scrooge chucks the goose at Cratchit.
Yeah, but it's a turkey. It's a kalkoen.
It's a turkey. It's a turkey.
The Dutch have never heard of eating geese, so
yeah, everything's a turkey because that's
turkey.
Yeah. Either would be a turkey or a chicken. That's one of the things that you have to decide when you do an adaptation is when and where. And Willy van Hemert must have had a discussion with himself. Should this be set in London, England, or Amsterdam? The story of redemption of a miserly guy could happen in Amsterdam just as much as it could happen in London. And I think he probably sat down and had a discussion. They went with London anyway, but you have to have the discussion. And what does it mean? One of the things that it means for doing a Dutch production of Christmas Carol, but having it set in London, is you have to be a little bit mindful of all the names. If you have like a very complicated name or a lack of name, they had to make up one name. Fred's wife has a name, because it comes up, and they name her Joan, which when we were going on, it's so Dutch to pick Joan. I don't think in British person would have picked Joan. It would have been some.
Are there any Joans in Dickens stories?
I don't think so. And Joan of course is comes from Joanna, but I think it'd probably be something else. It would be Henrietta. It would not be no. Elizabeth, yes, but. I do believe, and I think that's actually in the book, the housekeeper is already called Elizabeth. He actually does mention it. So I think they already have an Elizabeth. I don't know. Anyway, the moment you grab something that doesn't, when you are not actually born in that culture, and you grab something, it's gonna be wrong.
Yes.
And
every single time.
It doesn't really matter because this adaptation is for Dutch people, so fair enough.
I can give you another one that they did wrong. Because of the window that Fred comes through. The reason Fred comes through the window is because otherwise you have to go into the hallway, the hallway, he has to open the door. Guess what? American houses and offices and UK houses and offices, the main outside door comes into the main living space.
Yeah, and that
doesn't happen in the Netherlands.
No. The layout of this house is going to be different because you have the hallway between the outside. Even though the offices and the bedroom actually have windows to the outside, you still go through a separate hallway to go out. Yes. Yeah, I know. They use it to much effect because once they actually get the ghosts in, the ghost of Christmas Past shows Scrooge to his own office, and the Scrooge goes, "It's my own office," but the office is gone because he says, "Well, 50 years ago there was no Scrooge and Marley, so there's nothing here." And then they can look and they can use the space to do the other events. Very smart. And
the camera's already set up, and all you need to do is change a little bit of furniture, but they used sparing furniture anyway.
It was actually a different location. It's a completely empty space. And they do the same thing with the bedroom one. I think the ghost of present takes him to the bedroom, and again, bedroom is gone. And you do the same thing. And it's just a smart... This thing, you could just take it off the screen and stick it onto a stage. It is a stage play. It is rehearsed as a stage play. It is done as a stage play. It moves as a stage play. And they filmed it pretty much in almost in one take. I think if they did like 3 takes altogether, three different complete versions of the thing, yeah. The thing that made it some of the adaptations of Christmas Carol awkward is the fact that he usually undresses for bed. You have to either drop scene that he undresses and then he's wearing a house coat and a thingy, or you're going to have him undress in the French version because stage, and they never stopped. He actually undresses and then redresses. It's a choice. It worked there, but it's awkward here because pace. They decide not to do any of that. Basically, he is so manic that he, after dinner in this version, to get in the scary bits, because they have like no budget, and you wanted to have some sort of scariness and special effect, enough scariness, because they realized you do need the scare of Marley, otherwise it's not going to work. You need the scare. So they had to do the scare, but the scare consists of some smoke machine and some green light and some great makeup. But to start it off with the big portrait of Marley that's on the wall, on the far wall, suddenly dropping down behind the dresser. And then Scrooge trying to get at it first from one side, and then he goes back to
it disappears. There is no falling sound.
No, he hears it falling.
He hears it come down, but it doesn't fall on the floor.
Yeah.
It actually goes through, and it basically goes to hell. That's the
whole
point.
Goes off flop. Yeah. And he's sort of full 5 minutes. He's trying to figure out what the problem is. He goes to sit at his late supper, and then he goes back, and he keeps talking, and he keeps working it. The build up towards your very simple special effect of just some smoke and a nice green light on it, and then a hand comes out.
He first gets the chain
Yeah.
from behind the dresser.
But that's the build up.
He thinks it's gold. Again, there's the connection with the chains and the gold. He thinks it's gold, so he's pulling it to him until the hand comes out, and then he's like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah, and
so good.
They push the idea of gold very much. In Dutch, goud is gold, geld is money. So doing an alliteration of goud and geld together, they do that a couple of times. Goud and geld, yes, a lot. So whenever they talk about money, he's going to talk about gold. The pounds are always gold, and you have pounds, shillings, and pennies. That's it, and the pounds are gold. So there's a lot of money going around in this particular version of he's doing big business, and it's a lot of money. He's sitting on a lot of money as well. Another interesting thing they did with Marley is when he comes, he's very scary. But he is also one of the few times when Marley and Scrooge had a chance to sit down and reminisce. The only other time I've seen that is in the Muppet Christmas Carol, where the hecklers come and the Marleys come and heckle, and then they talk a little bit about how much fun it was to extort people. They do it here too. And it's the only two versions I've ever seen that in. And the thing I noticed is that these two together, and there's another scene later, other than these are some of the best actors ever. They cast some really good actors all together, but they particularly cast a good actor for Marley as well. But then you only have the one scene, so they gave him a second scene later. Is they feed off each other so much. They basically, these two together are a match made in hell, because they egg each other on in nastiness. And so they reminisce a little bit, but then Marley remembers what he's supposed to be doing, and he warns that there's going to be ghosts. And then the ghosts, I'm going to have to call them spirits, because that's the word is going to be spirit in Dutch. They do they do a lot of songs. So we've already done like 5 songs and you missed it already. I'm going to go back a little bit, because about the music. The writer of the music, Ruud Bos, is so good. And this is a Dutch tradition, to write towards your singers. You usually, in these situations, you usually already know who you're going to be writing for, and you write towards their strength. Henk van Ulsen is a wonderful orator, great diction. You can teach him. He can do a lot of text, and he does it really well. But he is a kind of Midland singer. He can carry a tune in a professional way, but he is not very low or very high. He is very Midland. What are you going to do with that? If you're the music writer, you either get somebody low enough to sit under him when you want to make him do a duet or something like that. Low basses are not that many, but sopranos, lots of sopranos everywhere. So when they do the scene with the charity gentlemen, they make it two charity ladies, and they do they wrote him a song in which he can be very spoken lyrical, lots of words, and they can be very high and very melodic, and it's perfect because you get the juxtaposition of his position and their position, and basically it's one of those repeater songs. One does one line and then you repeat it in slight different tone setting. And the lines are slightly different because they say, do something for charity. And he says, well, people should help themselves and should take care of themselves and not have other people take care of them. But we want to take care of, the smart. And the entire musical is like that, of juxtapositions of melodic stuff against fast stuff, against staccato stuff, against high stuff. Perfect. And I can't show you any of it, unfortunately. But Ruud Bos, yes, he deserves a little statuette of some sort, because that's good. And then when you have two great actors like Henk van Ulsen and Marley Droog, who are both like middle range of singing voice, but very good actors, very good at doing text, they write a song in which they can do text together, like reminiscing about how terrible they were to a rhyme. The rhyming is so good. Just the way that rhymes rhyme to each other, and it's in Dutch. It's very important to rhyme really well, and they nailed that. Marley is very scary, which it should be, and when Scrooge talks about the joys of gold, he calls it poison. Goud is vergif. It's poison. And he says, we're going to send you spirits. And these spirits come, but they come. So from the church, you get a cutscene to the church facade. A bunch of grey angels, like stone angels, but now personified. A whole bunch of them are singing. And 3 of them change to a count, a man of the stock exchange, and one I had to translate as father, as in a Catholic priest. Graaf, beursman, and pater. The father, the Catholic father in Dutch, has a separate name that is not confused with any other word. So I'm going to keep calling him pater because it's annoying to having to correct it in my head as father. He's not the father, he is pater.
Pastor?
Nee, pastor is not Catholic.
Priest?
He's also not. Yeah, I could. Actually,
He's more a monk.
he's dressed in a monk's habit. So, but monk is also the wrong thing because he is doing all the things that a priest would be doing. So I'm gonna go back to pater. There's no good translation. They set out to rehabilitate our very disagreeable little man.
When they introduce the spirits, the singing is actually heavenly choir type. So they never say it, but I think they were intended to be angels.
Yes. This version, being a religious parable, is absolutely intending them to be angels. Yes, but not mission, named as angels.
Yeah, they also have a mission. They are there's all this the heavenly choir behind them is sending the three. They are being chosen, and then they are going to send them in to help Ebenezer.
Yes, and for the people who. So the Netherlands is for the most part Protestant. Again, this is the Catholic group of it, but even the Catholics in the Netherlands are pretty Northern Catholics. And the idea of an angel who is not the nicest, but there to redeem you, absolutely flies. That's absolutely no problem. An angel is not a kindly thing. It is a
heavenly tool.
A heavenly, yes. So them being not super nice, yes. Especially the first one, the Count. This is kind of interesting that he introduced himself as a comte by the French name. In a Dutch thing, he introduces himself by the French name because they want to do a play at words, which actually doesn't work in Dutch. It actually does work in English. It's slightly different because he is a count who is there to take accounts of Scrooge's actions, past actions, as the ghost of Christmas past. Very interesting. They called in the song, they called themselves the spirit of then, the spirit of now, and the spirit of later. Of course, later very much later rhymes with pater. So you have that. But I like that. On the hand credits, they have the proper names, but I like the spirit of then. So the spirit of then, the count to take accounts of Scrooge's past actions. He's actually dressed in as an 18th century gentleman. I didn't say anything about the costumes yet, but like I said, there is the budget. They didn't spend it on the costumes. They spent some on the costumes, especially on the ladies' dresses. They have the hoop dresses. We are going for roughly 1850s. It doesn't really matter. This is not for that kind of accuracy, and it is accurate within itself. But the gentlemen, and I think that's because the budget, we need a lot of gentlemen, and we also need a lot of ladies, but they went to some sort of stock room and got whatever they could find. And for the gentlemen, they all have the short pants. They're all wearing 18th century short pants. All except Scrooge. And I think Scrooge is the only one who's wearing a black outfit.
Cratchit?
I think
Cratchit has
I'd have to
pantaloons.
Would be for the same reason that Scrooge has, and I will explain what the reason is. So I think that outfit that Henk van Ulsen is wearing, and he is for a Dutch person, he is a little on the short side. He's a short guy. I think he's wearing his own clothes. I think this is from his own wardrobe, his own set of. Because I think he probably has everything that he was really a professional actor. He would have had something for every era and for every occasion. So those black pants are his own, and I think maybe if Cratchit would be wearing a brown pants, I think that is his own as well. So that's why everybody else is wearing shorts, pants, and Scrooge is not. Okay, I live.
But it actually works quite well because
It's cohesive. It's cohesive.
Yeah, Scrooge is separated himself from normal life. He is an unacceptable social person. That is demonstrated by Fred's wife's specifically reaction to him, and of course the ladies coming for charity. And so what he is wearing can be incongruous with the rest of the world because it's an outward sign of that he is not part.
Yeah. It's like I said, it doesn't really matter that much. And I think if you have the choices that you have to make, do we spend money on script? Do we spend money on the proper costume? Then I say spend it on the script. Because I think those are the choices that Willy van Hemert would have been facing. Do I spend it on something important, or do I spend it on something more important? So, fair enough. So in the spirit of then is dressed as a 18th century gentleman, which is very stately, also very tall. And he takes Scrooge to task on his past to some of the actual changes to the story that I think, on hindsight, they had to make. The scene of little Scrooge having to stay over at boarding school for the winter holidays. It's a scene they do a lot because it's a very evocative scene. But in 1979 in the Netherlands, you have a problem. Apart from the fact that you have like 5 problems here. One, the availability of children to do scenes at all. There's very strong laws against child labor, so when they get a child in, they have to put it in as best to the best of their abilities. So they already need somebody for Tiny Tim, and you have like only a few filming days in the summertime for this, and between the schedule of the kid going to holiday as well. So you have all of that to work with. So your kid is going to be older than you might want. So I think this kid's at least 14 years old this kid is 14. Fine. You're going to have to accept that and move on. Tiny Tim is also going to be on 14 or something like that. So fine. Second thing is you're already gonna have Tiny Tim dying later on, and you're gonna have really sad little Scrooge as well. Okay, that's not happy making, but it's part of the story. So yeah, he's gonna have to be unhappy. But then the boarding school in 1979 in the Netherlands, for an audience that's going to involve also Dutch kids, we don't have that. We just don't have it. We didn't have it at the time. Nobody knew what you were talking about. You would have to explain it. You'd have to take your 5 minutes and explain what is a boarding school. Why is he staying over? How does it work? And they said, okay, we give up. We're changing the scene, so they changed the scene to something completely different. It's a scene of little Scrooge being
thrown the inkwell to the schoolmaster.
Yeah, but he didn't. He's being punished. He's doing a song. It's all in song. The entire past is in song. He's singing about that he's being punished. He's sitting in a school bench being punished for throwing the inkwell at the teacher, but he didn't do it. But his friend did, or his sort of friend did, but he's not going to rat him out because he's not a rat, but now he's going to miss out on Christmas and on the cookies and and he loves cookies and So
he's also younger than most little Scrooges that we see, because mostly they're like 10, 12 years old. And this was like a 6 to 8 year old Scrooge.
He's playing a 6 to 8 year old, but the kid himself is much older than that. That's fine. So he's playing a grade school 7, 8 year old Scrooge who's being unfairly punished because nobody believed him, nobody would listen to him, and Daddy wouldn't believe him, and so you can have your sad scene, and then Fanny comes and tells him that the person who did it has confessed, and now he can come to Christmas. So you get the up, and you get the down and the up without getting an explanation that you don't have time for, and some really bad sadness, because if a Dutch person thinks about a boarding school, you become already unhappy. He doesn't even have to stay over for Christmas for a Dutch person to think that this is a bad idea.
Well, we think it's a prison.
Yeah. We in the Netherlands we don't have them. The only time that they ever come up is if there is absolutely no other choice. You never do it voluntarily.
Seafaring parents.
Seafaring parents or stuff like that. So they had to do. This is where translation is different from straight adaptation. There is no way they could have done it the way it was written without either spending a lot of time to explaining it, and or looking like that the entire time doing it. And I understand when you're doing an adaptation of an older thing, when you're stuck with the thing and you can't change it, that you would love to do that, and then it's a different discussion. But here, you have the freedom to do something else, but you must in this case you must do something else, because you cannot take it as the way it is. It's difficult, and doing it right is difficult. And I think they made the right choice, probably within certain constraints that we are not even aware of. Like the boy who plays Tiny Tim is much stronger in singing than the boy who plays Scrooge, and I think they may have actually had like 2 singers and that's it, and they put the best one in Tiny Tim, and the less strong, he's very charming, but he's not so strong into Little Scrooge.
And the whole cinematography was set up for that as well, because when Tiny Tim gets to sing his song, you get a close-up and it just stays on the boy.
Yeah.
And his parents gather around him, and it's super love. I mean, literally, the love just pours off that scene because they can close it up on the boy.
Yeah.
And with little Scroogey,
you have the widest shot you ever seen. Yeah. It is also,
and that also makes him sad, alone, abandoned, and all of that, and not understood, not even misunderstood. But
the entire sequence of the past is shot at a super wide angle, and I think there's and from above, because he's looking from the landing from the hallway into the abyss of his where her office used to be, and the trick the bug is, of course, that you don't want to go too close to what the one singer, because he's not strong enough, and they make it a feature by doing almost the entire sequence of the past at a very far away, because it is far away, because it was so long ago. And when they come to the scene of Bella and young Scrooge, they very slowly come closer. Still, I'm going to put a shot here, and it's still never closer than that. They also keep always on the back of Henk van Ulsen playing young Scrooge, because he's supposed to be 20, and the guy's 50. And so even with the screen quality, as you can see, he's gonna... But they make it a feature and not a bug. Even the fact that he is not a great singer. They pick somebody to play Bella who is in a lower register for a girl called an alto. Yeah, an alto. She's an alto, and he is a sort of he's a
tenor.
He's a tenor. He's a weak tenor for singing. He doesn't have a big range. She has a big. She ranges into his range, and then when they sing together, they sing. One time they sing. There's one time they sing harmony, and one time they actually sing together. And she comes low enough for him to be in the same thing. But you can hear that he is the weaker singer, but they realize, and this is not the only version that realized it, it is so important that Bella and young Scrooge have a verse together, because it shows why they were together for a bit. And then when they break up, because and I watched it again yesterday, I was crying when they sing En toch hield ik van jou, and yet I loved you.
So the love.
It's the last verse. Last time they do the verse starts with "Yet I loved you," and I'm going, "Oh my God!"
And that's why it was so important in the Muppet Christmas Carol when they took the song out.
Oh God!
Because
in the re-release they took the song out.
And so in the new so many anniversary extended version, ha ha ha, the song is in, and what she says, the love is gone. They had it.
Yeah.
They had everything, and he wrecked it.
And they
let it just fall. He dropped it like a potato and never picked it back up. And he's saying to himself, "You fool."
Yes. And in this version also, he keeps lying to himself, and then the spirit keeps telling him, but that's not what had happened. Here, look what happened. And then he shows a scene that is not in the book, but it's actually a different version of it. It's in the Alistair Sim version, where the death scene of Marley. So like I said, the chap they had for Marley is so good. They need a second scene, yes. And you see how they are together, because in the scene where Marley is a ghost, Marley pretty much dominates Scrooge and scares the crap out of him. But
he literally does, because he jumps on.
He jumps all of me.
when Scrooge is retreating to the bed where he's holding his cash box. His gold box, and then Marley just jumps on top of him, and they stay like that for minutes on end while he tells him, he's there singing, obviously.
Yeah, they're singing, yes.
And now you are going to be visited by these ghosts.
Yeah, but in the death scene, it is the death. It is very uncomfortable to watch, because it shows. Marley is dying, and they're talking about
how much the doctor would cost.
Yeah, okay.
Don't bring the doctor. Just the guy knows nothing, and he will charge me for it. Wait, I'm dying. Bring me the doctor.
You can pay him with the proceeds of the bed. But then Scrooge says, if you live, there will be no proceeds of the bed, and if you die, that was a waste of money anyway. He is completely lost the plot, and that's what the
scene. So has Marley. They're the same.
Yeah. Yes, they are. Nuts. They are their worst soundboard of each other. It's and now you see that he's lost the plot, and he hasn't. And since Marley died, and you can see that in the first scene where he talks at Cratchit, trying to get that soundboard going with Cratchit that he used to have with Marley. But Cratchit gives him 0, because
he doesn't have that temperament.
It doesn't make any sense. It actively doesn't make any sense to him. So he sort of goes, "Oh, okay, I'm gonna be over here now," And he and Scrooge keeps looking for the soundboard, and he cannot find it. And this is a theme of this version. This version is very good, because in little bits of crumbs drops it everywhere. He talks about being alone. He talks about being lonely. He says it like 5 or 6 times, and then right at the end, when the spirit of Christmas present leaves him, he runs after every single spirit out into the street, and then at the end of the spirit he's standing in the street, and the second spirit he's calling after Cratchit. Cratchit has to come, because Cratchit...
Bring Cratchit!
Because, and that's when I realized that when he was standing in the street, in like the good hour into the thing, calling for Cratchit in the middle of the night, I was thinking, he'd been doing that earlier on as well. When it was in the opening scene, he started counting money or writing something down, and then he lost his train of thought, and then he
was talking to Marley, even though Marley wasn't there yet.
That also, but he was starting something and then giving it to Cratchit to finish, and then did it again, and he did it again. He cannot hold a train of thought for more than 5 seconds. He is having a straight up nervous breakdown of a spiritual kind, basically. He is falling apart. He's been falling apart for years, and nobody's done anything.
Well, maybe 7 years since Marley is dead.
Yeah, but he was not okay when he was Marley, are you?
So really, the downfall comes when he lets Bella go. I mean, not that that could have been saved at that point.
Bella couldn't save it.
But he was probably going to be, if I can't see any sort of Bella actually taking him on from that moment, and I think she did the right thing
for her.
But
yes.
After that, there was no saving of him at all, and Marley just made it worse.
When he gave up Bella, I think Marley was already in the picture. Yeah. But neither the book doesn't say, this thing doesn't say either.
But it might have been a deciding factor for Bella. She says in several versions, you spend more time at this desk than you spend thinking about me or talking to me. Yeah,
there's a case.
We don't know each other
there's a case to be made for Marley being part of this problem. Yes. A wonderful thing about this version is the way they do with a simple change of colored lights, change the mood, change everything. Like the street in the middle of the night, it has a blue hue, and inside has Marley had green, and the inside of the place is sort of dark with some lamplight, so a little bit of golden hue. The memories are all filmed top down and sometimes close up, but mostly far away when it's the memories, and when it's Cratchit family it's filmed head on but also far away, because you're looking outside, looking in. Ditto for the
except for the Tiny Tim song.
Yeah, but they basically it's the same shot. They're holding the shot and just zooming in onto the table. It's a view. It's a view of a table, and then you slowly zoom in. But you start with a fully out-zoomed version. Basically, they did it with almost all of it was just one camera, and one angle, the entire take in one shot, almost universally. One of the things that, of course, are in the book is that these spirits are very ethereal and very non-corporeal. And if you have no special effects, you can't do that. So they went for the Ghost of Christmas Present for a Man of the Stock Exchange. And they have the gentleman for that, Paul van Gorkum. And the first one was, by the way, van de Vlucht.
That's Sinterklaas, right?
Yes, very stately gentleman. Paul van Gorkum is a consummate player of nasty bankers, has made a career out of it. Gentleman of business, bankers in soaps, in dramas, everything on stage. That was what he was famous for. So he plays a banker here as the ghost of now, spirit of now. And he comes to order the books. He just opens the safe without having needing the combination, because he's a spirit. And this is the only time you actually get a special effect, because Scrooge calls his spiritness in question, and he says, "Oh, you want a spirit? Spirit." Very simply done with a red light this time. So
a sheet over it.
Yeah, the full sheet treatment.
The ghostly sheep.
But I like him in a suit better. But he's very businesslike, and I think that is the way in many versions that they have the Ghost of Christmas present be a jovial guy, and you sort of go, what is this jovial guy doing with Scrooge, who is as dry as dirt? And I think this is actually better because Scrooge knows how to talk to a man of business. He can talk to this guy better than he would to anybody else. This guy does offer him a drink of the wine of Christmas. Basically, he offers him something, and he does drink. It was not on the audio version because you can't see it on the audio version, but you can see it. So they make sure that they put in all these little details that are part of the original, like Marty's chain, which is now behind the dresser, and then Scrooge finds it, and but it is there. It is part of the lore. Because they have a good person, a good kid to play Tiny Tim, they have give him a nice long song, beautifully sung. It's very nice. And they do the scene with Fred and his wife, and make sure that it is as opulent as they can make it within the budget, which is a lot of people. They make sure they had a lot of people, so they used a lot of people. So they have a very
and the dancing.
There was lovely dancing there. I think they asked the dance group to come and be the guests of Fred's evening.
And the theme of that was really the joy of life.
Yes.
And that's the thing.
Laughter and happiness, and
that's also part of the complete story. Like, not just this version, but it's not just that he needs to understand that he has done bad and he could do good in the future. He could save people, but he also is going to be rewarded with joy of life.
Yeah, the thing that, and that's again a slow setup through the entire thing, is that with his miserliness, especially in this version, he doesn't just shortchange other people. He also shortchanges himself. He sits down for a meal and then leaves half of it for tomorrow, and then when he comes to his bedroom, the housekeeper has left slemp. I had to look it up. It is a milky drink, and scones because it's Christmas. And he sort of goes. He has some of the slemp, which I think is probably sugary, milky drink, hot. And then he sort of looks at the scones and says, "It's a waste. He's already been given it. Why don't you eat it? Because he's got his head is weird. He's shortchanging himself as well. He's eating gosts, every day with some skimmed milk. He's shortchanging himself on life." And the scene with Fred and the opulence and the nice dresses and the dancing and the food is that you don't need to shortchange yourself without overdoing it on yourself. You can still give yourself enough and more and some extra sometimes without it's weird. It's and this Fred says it in his toast. It is a disease. This is the only version that I know that called it straight up a disease. And they don't do anything about it because it is 1843, and so Dickens knew that there was a problem, but he couldn't name it. And at least this version, because it's from 1979 and not from 1843, is that it has to name it, because this is obviously a disease. Fred's opulence and his remarks about the sadness of his uncle ends Spirit of Now. And again, the spirit walks off much faster than Scrooge can follow, and he runs after, and again he ends up in the middle of the street shouting for Cratchit because he thinks it's ridiculous that Tiny Tim is going to die from what? Yeah, lack of money. Is that ridiculous? It's a crying shame. And he sort of goes and he realizes he's in the middle of the street, and he goes back in and he sits down at his table in his bedroom. And he says, well, maybe I can get him some money, because the lockbox is there. The lockbox he had in his bed, he now migrated to the table. He migrated it earlier. Maybe I can give him £100. No, £10 is enough. No, £8. I can live a month on £8. So £8. No, that's too much. And then his. The groats that are soaking, would have been soaking, but they're not soaking. They're thankful they're not soaking. Are sitting in a pot on the table as well, and he sort of goes, "Hey, can't the kid eat groats? Groats are good for you. I ate groats many years." And he sings a song about groats, and he sort of goes, "I hate groats. I hate groats," and he sings a song about hating groats. And he runs off again to the streets. He runs off into the streets, still wanted to give something to someone. And he sees two little kids, and these are the tiniest little kids I ever saw. And I think these are actually 6 years old, and they don't have any lines, because he talks at them, tries to give them money. And the girl is so small, she has no idea what's going on. So she goes,
but they're vagrant kids. They're in a
middle.
corner.
Yeah, it's the middle of the night in the snow, yeah. and the boy is going. This is a very natural reaction, because he's being
because he's shouting so much.
It's the reaction of these kids. I mean, they don't have any lines, but it's so choice. The little girl has no idea what's going on. The boy is going like that. And it is the other scene that they hardly ever do in this adaptation, when, in the book, when the ghost of Christmas present comes to, the journey comes to an end for him, he says, "I'm going to go now." And then Scrooge says, "Hey, what's under your cloak? What is that?"
I see something moving.
And is that a hand? Is that a claw? And then the ghost says it might as well be, because and he shows them. He opens the coat and he shows Scrooge 2 little kids, a boy and a girl. He says the boy is ignorance and the girl is want, but beware the boy. That's what he says in the book. So you can't do that like that. So they stuck it in here. Those are obviously ignorance and want. You know, ignorance with his hands in his ears, and want with a completely clueless look on her face.
And they were so young.
I think they're
like
6,
4 or 5 years old.
Yeah. Oh. They perfect. So worth doing the little scene. So from that scene, he's still in the street. He turns around, and there stands the pater, the priest, pater. And he starts his liturgy. He talks about there will be service for the deceased at the house. He never actually converses with Scrooge, because the ghost didn't, but he talks. He gives information.
He pronounces.
He's
and like the town crier, but Catholic priest version.
Yeah, and they have the guy that they have for it has such a beautiful voice. I mean, yeah, that screams religious father for oh yeah, pater. Yes, oh God. And he takes him through the Ghost of Christmas Future sequence, which is pretty much as written. They go to the stock exchange, which is a lovely singing scene, and he gets a hint pretty early on that he's the one who's dead, but he first believes it, and then he goes into denial. He goes into straight up denial. I kept it pretty simple, because from there he goes to his house and to the office where Fred and Cratchit are signing paperwork and talking about what to do with the business. As Fred, it seems to be in his hands now, and he says, "I'm gonna. Can you take it over? And it would be nice if we were in time for Tiny Tim, but we're not. And Tiny Tim is died." And the scene itself is very simple, but what they did with the framing was on the side. I'll show you here. You have the condolences book, and I had to look it up what a condolences book is in English, and I couldn't. There must be a condolence register. It's called in Dutch. So the translation on Google Translate is exactly condolence register, so it doesn't really work. Whatever. You have it at the front, and Scrooge opens it to see who signed it, because everybody who's visited is supposed to have signed it. It is empty. Pages and pages and pages of empty, except then Bella, the only person who signed it. And when that comes up, the music of Bella's song comes up again, of course. And while Fred and Cratchit are talking about the stuff, you hear Bella. Yikes! It's a very simple way of showing of putting these things together, because indeed in the book you get a scene with Bella having married somebody else, and her husband saying, "Hey, I've heard about your ex-person in the city," and blah. It's a very simple way of putting it together. Of course, cannot end with anything other than a certain casket being carried out of the place, and everybody is very happy. And he's going in denial over it, and he runs in the street, and it's not me, and tell me it's not me, and tell me it is not me, please. And then the spirit takes him to the cemetery, and here is another change they had to make, because we know what a cemetery is because they have him too, but they wanted to show that he was buried in in a bad place. And I think in the book, actually I did look it up, but I don't think they mentioned the name of the cemetery. They name it here very specifically. I did write it down. Highgate Hill. Highgate Hill Cemetery. And I didn't look it up, but maybe I should have. But in 1979, nobody knows. There's no looking up anything yet. Not Wikipedia anyway. So they needed to subtitle that. And so what they did, very smart. What they did, they had one view of 4 graves and a path along the graves, and they had the Ghost of Christmas Future go to each of the headstones and read them aloud. Blah 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 person hung for murder. Next person, blah 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 person hung for poisoning. Blah blah, next person, blah blah blah. So 4 people done horrible things, and then you come to the 5th one. Ebenezer Scrooge. Yeah. And it's because of translation that you have to do it like that, because you have to explain it some way. He tries to cling to that's actually in the book. In the book, he clings to the robes of the Ghost of Christmas Future. Once he pleads, he clings, and then he ends up holding the drapes of his bed and wakes up. That's actually in the book. So here he clings to the father, and the father unhands him and drops him, which is extremely evocative. The look on the guy's face. They leave him there, and he wakes up in his own bed. And there's a little intermezzo scene for when the ghosts come. The three ghosts come back to the church and become stone angels again. So that was nice. And they do a song, quite nice long song too. So I like that. One of the problems with the original book is it is written 1843. I've repeated it a couple of times, but I shall be repeating it a lot, I'm sure. It is a heck of a long time ago, and it is 50 years before Freud even opened his psychoanalysis office. And yet this story is of a psychoanalysis of it's a kind of a fairy tale version of a psychoanalysis done by a bunch of angels and with sledgehammers almost. And that's the brilliant part of this book. What is not so good is what do you do after? I mean, he gets happy, which is exactly what he does. He gets happy, he makes good, but what is he going to do after that? Here's a scene which it was a very interesting scene. The first thing he wants to do is give a kid some money. So cause he had tried that earlier, but yeah. And so he gets a couple of kids off the street. A boy. This happens to be a boy and a girl. And he says, "Here, you have a golden pound." And the boy says, "Ah, chocolate. Huh? That's not chocolate." And then Scrooge says, No, that's gold. And the boy says, and he runs off with the gold, by the way, because he runs off, and Scrooge runs after him. And then there's the police. There's the police guy who's been around a couple of times, and they had like small engagements earlier, so we've seen him around. So Big Bobby with a big. He's a really big guy as well. He runs after the kid because obviously something went wrong. So he runs after it, gets the kid back and his sister, come back to Scrooge and says, "What's going on here?" And says, Scrooge says, "I just want to give the kid a little money." And then the kid says, "Yeah, but it's gold." And then the policeman says, "Yeah, no, you're lying." And then the kid says, "Here." And then the policeman says, and he turns to Scrooge and says, "But sir, you cannot give kids gold like that. It'll scare them." Now, if you gave him to me, being a fully grown man, you'd make me ecstatically happy. But
a corps of police, for instance, would be made very happy with such a coin. But certainly not children. It is very well done.
Yeah, and so Scrooge does get the hint, and he gives the boy and the girl each a shilling, and then he gives the policeman and the gold, and the policeman indeed is very, very happy, but appropriately happy. And then Henk van Ulsen breaks the fourth wall, turns to the camera and says, "Life is so much better if you can take part, als ik maar mee mag doen." Because being alone and being singular has been a theme throughout, and now he can take part. And then the day starts and people come out, and he starts going around, and they sing a song, because now we get a nice the ensemble ballad, which unfortunately, because the sound quality is as soon as more than 4 people start singing together, it's very hard to understand. It's a shame, because anyway, they sing about joy and everything, and in the middle of it, he suddenly sees the ladies from the charity, and they change to that song, and he suddenly sings a completely different song, and he gives them £1,000. He actually names the numbers. Again, one of the few versions that actually names the numbers. He gives them £1,000, 500 for her and 500 for her in cash. And then he comes, as he was getting the money, he came into the office, and there he had somebody sent for Cratchit. So Cratchit is coming in, and then he sings the song with Cratchit that he sang at the very, very first, at the start of the thing. But now he sings a different text. Where he's used to say, you have to work hard for every cent you earn, and you must be happy that an employer pays you. Here he says employers have the duty to pay their employees when they work. He changed his tune. He literally changed his tune or the verse anyway, the text. So they go through. Then Fred comes because the word has gotten around. So Fred's coming in a panic. What's going on? And then he sings with Fred about Marley, the chances that Marley gave him. Then in the middle of that, because the entire sequence from here is just song. Yeah, like I said, the big problem with the book is that what do you do after? And this thing realized that what is he going to do after? He basically, in this one, he just opens his lockbox, which is full of gold, and he just starts handing out hands full of the stuff. He even throws it in the street. Because what are you going to do with it? It is so difficult to do right with it. You don't know what to do. So it's kind of shorthanding, showing that he's sharing it back, but it's very shorthandy, which I understand. It's a musical. And then we're back in the street because he was throwing it out in the street, and we get the last bit of the ensemble singing, actually breaking the fourth wall again, turning to us like in a regular musical, stage musical, where the entire ensemble just sings at the audience for a bit. They do that. And then everybody starts breaks out in song in dancing, and you get the very song that was the start of the entire thing, which is just a happy street song. And then you get credits and goosebumps. So the closing song, the song that you came in on, you go out with, and this is how to do an adaptation, how to do it well, and realizing that you must be at least as good or better than the original. And one of you cannot be better than Dickens, but you can be better at making TV than Dickens, because no TV. So yes, you can do that. And keep the original. And one of the things they did keep the original in is the naming, because the name, like I said earlier, the name of the book is A Christmas Carol, in prose, being a ghost story of Christmas, which is a very long title if you think about it. And they translated, they named this thing the wonderbaarlijke genezing van Ebenezer Scrooge, which is not longer, but not by much not longer. The miraculous cure of Ebenezer Scrooge, being what it is, being not a ghost story of Christmas, but being a parable of with ghosts in it.
And it refers back to the mental illness.
Yes, which is also a theme. But having the long title also alliterates with the original. Translating to match, but making sure that it matches us as well. Matches the original, but matches us. It's very difficult to do this right. And it cannot be without without some people saying, hey, why did you change that? And I want to know why. Then you better have a bloody good answer. And I think Willy van Hemert would have had a bloody good answer for everything that he did here. So, you can't see it, unfortunately. I hope one day, maybe it's not lost, which is one thing. At least it's not lost. It's just on a shelf somewhere. But that's a Dutch thing. That we have a lot of things that are lost, and if we don't toot our... That's why I wanted to do this. If we don't toot our own horn, who will? If I've seen it, if I don't say that it existed, who will know that it existed? And it's one of the best ones ever. And it makes so many wonderful points. And it's, because of the translation, it's free to make these points. Which another adaptation would actually have to go for an alternate version of a different time of whatever. Or, So. Mental illness. In 1979, that was something that started to come up, and loneliness is still a thing that people in the Netherlands take seriously. You can have terminal loneliness, in 1979 or now. In fact, literally yesterday, I saw a commercial on how to combat loneliness on YouTube. Targeted commercial for the Netherlands, It's a thing here. They didn't do humbug. They implied it because onzin, you can say that, but it doesn't hold the same weight. So it's more in the attitude of Scrooge that he indicated on humbug more than he said it. But they had to do something with the Tiny Tim. They had to do something with God blesses everyone. And that was difficult. If you try to translate God blesses everyone in Dutch as, the peanut gallery is pulling a face. Yeah, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. No. Mm-hmm. So, and it has to do, it's difficult to explain, it has to do with the fact that if you... the blessing is something that God does. Or if necessary, a priest or somebody from the church. A little kid doesn't do that. God bless, the way you say it in English, is not... we don't do that. We just don't do that at all. So this kid would not be saying that. But then you want him to say something iconic at this point. So what are you going to have him say? And there is a scene where Cratchit later in the Ghost of in the Future, when Tiny Tim is already dead, and this is in the book. He comes and they commiserate, and he says something about this is the first of our partings, and you shall always remember Tiny Tim, and that they usually, very often they do that in the different adaptations, but he also says, I'm glad. And he doesn't explain that, but I think it is what he's trying to say is, I'm glad he existed at all. Of course I'm upset that he's dead, but I'm not glad, I'm not unhappy of having met him, the fact that he was alive and that I met Tiny Tim and that we had this time together, I'm glad of that. And that's why he says, I'm glad. So in the book you sort of go, why? Here they took that up and gave it to Tiny Tim to do. In a slightly different version, Ik heb geen verdriet. Which translates as I have no sadness. And ik heb geen verdriet is something that a person who could be dying says. I'm not sad, I was alive. And so it's very poignant when he says it. Ik heb geen verdriet. It's part of the song. Ik heb geen verdriet. Met ouders, broers en zusjes. Er staat something else. En zondag een preek. En 1000 lieve kusjes. Kisses and sisters rhyme. So it's I am not sad. With brother, sisters, brother, parents and sisters. I don't remember that bit, but going to church and 1000 sweet kisses. That's very sweet. You have to do something with it. Make it poignant, but make it fit the culture. So, it's very sad. I have to. I love this one, of course. So, and that's my opinion. And I think that the peanut killer is just smiling at me right now. It's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it.